Welcome to Hollywood Secrets. In today's episode, we'll be unveiling some of the most heartbreaking and tragic stories of legendary classic Hollywood stars whose final moments were spent in a way that no one could have imagined. These are the stars who, after reaching the peaks of fame, tragically found themselves ending their lives on the footpath, far from the glamour and luxury they once knew. Join us as we reflect on their stories and the dark twists of fate that led them to their untimely ends. Peg Antwhistle, the tragic plunge of a starlet. Peg Antwhistle was a rising starlet in Hollywood during the 1930s, having appeared in films like 13 Women. However, after a series of setbacks and personal struggles, Peg's promising career came to a halt. In 1932, her life took a tragic turn. At the age of 24, deeply disillusioned and unable to cope with the pressures of her career, she climbed the famous Hollywood sign and leaped to her death. Her final moments were spent alone on the footpath, far from the stardom she once sought. Peg's haunting end remains one of the most tragic stories in Hollywood history. Barbara Payton, from glamour to the streets. Barbara Payton was a blonde bombshell who appeared in a string of films in the 1940s and 1950s, including Kiss Tomorrow, Goodbye, and Bride of the Gorilla. Her beauty and acting talent earned her roles alongside big names like James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart. However, Payton's personal life was marked by scandal, abuse, and addiction. As her career faltered, she turned to alcohol and became involved in a series of failed relationships. In the early 1960s, Payton's downward spiral was complete. She found herself homeless and living on the streets, eventually dying of heart failure in 1967 at the age of 39. Her last moments were a far cry from the glamorous Hollywood life she had once known. William Desmond Taylor, the murder that shook Hollywood. William Desmond Taylor was a well-respected actor and director in the 1920s. Known for his roles in silent films and his relationships with major Hollywood stars like Mary Miles Minter and Mabel Normand, Taylor was a respected figure in the industry. However, in 1922, Taylor's life ended in mysterious circumstances. He was found dead in his home, and his murder remains unsolved to this day. His tragic death rocked Hollywood, but few know that in his final days, Taylor had fallen on hard times. He was facing financial difficulties and was reportedly considering leaving Hollywood for a quieter life. The mystery surrounding his murder continues to intrigue and haunt the legacy of old Hollywood. Marty Feldman, from Hollywood's heights to tragic end. Marty Feldman, famous for his roles in films like Young Frankenstein and Silent Movie, was one of Hollywood's most unique comedic actors. With his distinctive look, large, bulging eyes, Feldman became a beloved figure in the 1970s comedy scene. But despite his success, Feldman's health began to deteriorate, and he faced financial struggles. Tragically, in 1982, he passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack while on vacation in Mexico at the age of 48. His final days are often remembered as those of a man who, despite his success, lived a turbulent life. There are reports that at the time of his death, Feldman was financially struggling, and it's said that he spent time on the streets before his passing, making his final moments as tragic as his untimely death. Sarah Miles, a star fallen from grace. Sarah Miles, a British actress, gained international fame in the 1960s for her roles in films such as Ryan's Daughter and The Man Who Fell to Earth. However, after her marriage to actor Robert Fox, her career suffered a severe setback. After battling depression and struggling with addiction, Sarah found herself living in near poverty by the late 1980s. In a sad twist of fate, she spent the final months of her life living on the streets. In 1990, Sarah died of a drug overdose on the very same streets where she had once walked in Hollywood's glory days. Her tragic end is a testament to how the pressure and darkness of fame can sometimes have devastating consequences. Fay Ray, the King Kong star's final struggles. Fay Ray, known as the iconic scream queen in the 1933 classic King Kong, was one of Hollywood's most famous actresses. However, after her fame from the King Kong franchise waned, Ray faced financial and personal hardships. She married several times, but each of her marriages ended in turmoil. By the 1970s, her finances were in shambles, and she found herself estranged from her family. Fay Ray passed away in 2004 at the age of 96, but the stories of her final years have often been overshadowed by the tragedy of her financial ruin and the solitude she faced before her death. Though not literally dying on the streets, Ray's final moments reflect the sense of loneliness and financial destitution that had plagued her in her later years. Herbert Marshall, the silent star who fell from grace. Herbert Marshall was a distinguished actor of the 1930s and 1940s, known for his roles in films such as The Letter and The Little Foxes. He had a successful career and was highly regarded for his suave, sophisticated image. However, after suffering a series of personal tragedies, including the death of his wife and the collapse of his career, Marshall fell into deep financial distress. He faced personal isolation, losing his popularity and slipping into poverty. By the end of his life, Marshall was reportedly living in near obscurity, with some accounts suggesting he passed away in poverty. Though not literally dying on the streets, Marshall's decline mirrors that of many former stars who find themselves alone and forgotten. Marina Dietrich, the diva who went into obscurity. Marina Dietrich was one of the most glamorous and iconic stars of old Hollywood. With her performances in The Blue Angel and Shanghai Express, she became known for her bold, unconventional femininity. However, by the 1950s, Dietrich's career began to wane, and she faced numerous personal and professional setbacks. Despite her early success, she struggled financially in her later years, with reports of her living in near poverty in her final years. At the time of her death in 1992, Dietrich had been largely reclusive, and she lived out her final years in virtual seclusion, a far cry from the stardom she once enjoyed. Gene Tierney, the beauty who suffered a dark fate. Gene Tierney was one of the most beautiful and talented stars of the 1940s, best known for her roles in films like Leave Her to Heaven and The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. However, her personal life was far from glamorous. Tierney suffered from severe mental health issues, including depression, and her struggles with addiction and isolation led to financial ruin. By the time of her death in 1991, Tierney had been largely forgotten by Hollywood and was living in near obscurity. Her final years were a sad contrast to the vibrant starlet she once was. Dorothy Dandridge, the tragic fall of a Hollywood icon. Dorothy Dandridge was one of the first black women to break into mainstream Hollywood and was the first African-American woman to be nominated for an Academy Award for her performance in Carmen Jones. However, despite her talent and beauty, Dandridge's career was marred by personal struggles, including an abusive marriage and financial instability. In the early 1960s, Dandridge was living in near poverty and isolation, spending her final months in a modest apartment. She tragically passed away in 1965 from an overdose at the age of 42. Her tragic life and untimely death remain a haunting reminder of how even the most talented stars can fall into the shadows. These heartbreaking stories of Hollywood's brightest stars ending their lives far from the glamour and luxury they once enjoyed show just how fragile fame and fortune can be. From homelessness to tragic personal struggles, these stars experience the darkest side of Hollywood's glitzy world. It's a sobering reminder that the lives of celebrities are often not as perfect as they seem, and their endings can be as tragic as their beginnings were glorious. If you were shocked by these tragic stories, don't forget to subscribe to Hollywood Secrets for more hidden tales from the world of classic Hollywood. Stay tuned for more mind-blowing content that unearths the darker side of Tinseltown.